Two 14-year-old girls are screaming at each other in a parking lot. Palm Beach, Florida, 2005. Officers show up expecting the usual middle school drama. Hair pulling, name calling, somebody's boyfriend said something stupid. Standard stuff. But then one of the girls calls the other one a prostitute. The officers separate them, ask what she means, and the story that comes out of this kid's mouth stops them cold. She says she's not a prostitute. She says she's a massage therapist. She's being paid hundreds of dollars in cash to visit a mansion on the wealthy side of the island. She's 14 years old. She says the house belongs to a man named Jeffrey Epstein. The officer, Chief Michael Ryder, had never heard the name. He ran it, and what came back wasn't a wealthy retiree. It wasn't even a normal rich guy. It was something stranger. Here was a man who had flown Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, and Prince Andrew on his private Boeing 727. A man who claimed to manage money for the most powerful families on Earth. A man who, on paper, had more influence than most heads of state. And yet, nobody could explain where his money came from. No trading records, no verifiable clients, no paper trail. Just a lot of very powerful people who, when asked about Jeffrey Epstein, suddenly couldn't remember much. That parking lot fight was the crack in the wall. Because the real question was never just what was happening inside that mansion. The real question was, how does a college dropout with no credentials become the private banker to the most powerful men in the world? I'm James Tudor. This is the file on the billionaire who never made a trade. Jeffrey Epstein's first job was teaching math at the Dalton School, the most exclusive prep school in Manhattan. He was 21. He wore turtlenecks and gold chains. He had no college degree. He dropped out of both Cooper Union and NYU. So how did he get hired to teach the children of New York's elite? The headmaster who hired him was Donald Barr, father of future Attorney General Bill Barr. That's the first thing you need to understand about Epstein. He never needed qualifications. He needed the right people. At Dalton, he didn't spend much time worrying about the students. He was focused on the parents. And one of those parents was Ace Greenberg, the chairman of Bear Stearns, one of the most powerful banks on Wall Street. Ace watched this young, fast-talking teacher work a room and told him straight, "You have a talent for making money. Get out of teaching." So Epstein walked off the playground and onto the trading floor. He was an outsider at Bear Stearns, loud, flamboyant, didn't play by the rules. But he rose faster than almost anyone in the firm's history. Made limited partner in 4 years. The reason? He figured out early that banking isn't really about math. It's about secrets. He specialized in tax avoidance for the ultra-wealthy. He learned where the richest families in America hid their money, their loopholes, their vulnerabilities. In that world, knowing where the bodies are buried is worth more than any trading strategy. And Epstein was taking notes on everything. A salary at Bear Stearns wasn't enough. Epstein wanted his own empire. And in the 1980s, he found the man who would hand it to him. Les Wexner. You know his brands. The Limited, Bath and Body Works, Victoria's Secret. The richest man in Ohio. A retail genius who'd built a billion-dollar empire from scratch. Epstein was a nobody. But he convinced Wexner he was a financial savant, someone who could protect his fortune from taxes, from enemies, from the chaos of the markets. In 1991, Wexner signed a document that legal experts still struggle to explain. He granted Jeffrey Epstein full power of attorney. This wasn't an investment contract. This was the keys to the kingdom. Epstein could hire, fire, sign checks, buy property, and borrow money, all in Wexner's name, without asking permission, without checking in. Total authority over one of the largest private fortunes in America. And then the assets started moving. That enormous townhouse on 71st Street in Manhattan, 9 stories, one of the largest private residences in New York City, transferred from a Wexner trust to Epstein. Price paid, $0. The private Boeing 727, formerly registered to the Limited. Epstein even built a strange model village in Ohio using Wexner's money, for reasons nobody has satisfactorily explained. Wexner would later say Epstein misappropriated more than $46 million from him. But here's what's hard to get past. For years, he let it happen. He handed this man his proxy. Why would one of the sharpest businessmen in America give his checkbook to someone with no credentials, no track record, and no accountability? That question has never been answered. Armed with Wexner's money and reputation, Epstein launched his own firm, J. Epstein & Co. He moved to the U.S. Virgin Islands, set up his operation in paradise, away from regulators, away from scrutiny. His pitch to new clients was almost theatrical in its exclusivity. I only manage money for billionaires. Minimum investment is $500 million. He made the velvet rope so high that most people assumed there had to be something extraordinary on the other side. When journalists and federal investigators finally tried to look inside, they found nothing. No trading records, no positions, no filings. If you manage billions of dollars, you leave a footprint. You buy stocks, bonds, currencies. You file disclosures with the SEC. Epstein filed almost nothing. He told people he was a currency trader, which was convenient. Currency markets run 24 hours a day. Hard to track, easy to explain away. But almost no major bank could find a single record of him making a trade. So, what was the actual business? Epstein wasn't selling investment returns. He was selling access. He collected influential people the way others collect art. Nobel laureates, former presidents, Hollywood names, British royals. He built a world where a dinner invitation from Jeffrey Epstein meant you'd be sitting next to someone who could change your life. He donated to Harvard and MIT, not out of generosity, but to buy legitimacy. To make himself seem like a patron of human achievement, the real product was the network itself, and the real currency was favors. All of that influence eventually got tested. The Palm Beach investigation in 2005 should have ended everything. Chief Reiter's team had built a serious case, multiple victims, corroborating evidence. They were ready to put Epstein away for the rest of his life. Then his lawyers got to work. Ken Starr, Alan Dershowitz. They didn't just defend Epstein. They went straight to the U.S. Attorney, Alexander Acosta, and negotiated over the heads of the local investigators. What they walked away with became known as the sweetheart deal. Instead of federal charges and a likely life sentence, Epstein pleaded guilty to a single minor state charge. He was sentenced to 18 months and served 13. But it wasn't even real prison. Every day he was driven from his cell to his office in Palm Beach on work release, spent the day conducting business, then returned at night. The victims were never notified, which was a direct violation of federal law. The federal investigation was quietly buried. When Acosta was later asked how he let this happen, he reportedly told colleagues that he'd been warned to back off, that Epstein belonged to intelligence. Whether that's true, a deflection, or both, nobody knows. But what is certain is this: the justice system bent in ways it simply does not bend for ordinary people. And it bent because of who Epstein knew and what he knew about them. Which brings us to the part nobody in power wants to talk about. When the FBI raided Epstein's Manhattan townhouse in 2019, they found cash, diamonds, and multiple passports with different names and nationalities. They also found photographs, loose photographs of young women found in a safe. And throughout his properties, the townhouse, the island, the New Mexico ranch, there were persistent reports of hidden cameras installed throughout the bedrooms, wired for video. Think about what that means as a business model. Epstein created environments where powerful men felt completely safe. Private islands, locked compounds, no press, no witnesses, no accountability. They thought they were in paradise. They behaved accordingly. But Epstein was watching. If you have footage that could end a billionaire's marriage, destroy a politician's career, or bring down a CEO, you don't need to know how to trade stocks. You don't need clients. You don't need a track record. You have something far more valuable: leverage. The money flowing into his accounts may not have been management fees at all. It may have been something closer to rent, paid quietly, regularly, by men who couldn't afford for Jeffrey Epstein to open his mouth. Jeffrey Epstein died in a Manhattan federal jail cell in August 2019. The security cameras malfunctioned. The guards on duty had fallen asleep. He was found hanging. The official ruling was suicide. A lot of people don't believe that. The debate continues. But whatever happened that night, the result was the same. He took everything he knew with him. Les Wexner says he was deceived and cut ties years before the arrest. The banks that processed millions in transactions say they didn't know the source. The famous friends say they barely knew him. Everyone is in the process of carefully forgetting. But the money was real. The island was real. The jet was real. The photographs were real. None of that came from nowhere, and none of it paid for itself. Someone knew. Probably a lot of someones. The next time you hear about a financial genius who emerged from nowhere, manages money for the ultra-wealthy, and somehow has no paper trail, don't ask what he's investing in. Ask what he's holding over people. I'm James Tudor. This is Empire Archives. Subscribe.